Hello patrons, it's Pam. It's nice to see you. So this month on Instagram, I posted a poll to see if you wanted to hear about 5 awkward and embarrassing stories that I have from interactions with publishers, or 5 games that have influenced me as a designer, and it was 50-50 on both of those things. So I chose to talk about 5 games that have influenced me as a designer. I'll still share those stories in another video because they're pretty hilarious. So I'm going to be sharing 5 games, and these are obviously not all of the games that have influenced me, but they're 5 that have definitely, inspired me, motivated me to think outside the box, literally. Yeah, and I'm gonna go through them sort of chronologically. Games that influenced me when I was a kid, and then as I grew up and I played more modern games and different types of games. So before I get into it, I want you to pause the video. I want you to pause the video and write down 5 games. I want you to guess what 5 games I'm going to be talking about in this video. And if you get any right, you'll get a prize. I don't know what it will be, but you'll get some sort of prize. Maybe it'll be a poem or a postcard, I don't know. So just pause, write down 5 games, and we'll see if you get any right. You got your 5 games? All right, here we go. First up is Labyrinth, the amazing Labyrinth. Does anyone remember this game? I think it came out in the 80s. I don't know if they have the date on here. Oh, 88, came out in 1988. It had a really cool board. So these tiles are actually connected to the board. They're raised up tiles that are stuck to the board. You would have tiles and they would go in between these spaces. So to set up the game, all these spaces would have these movable tiles. And you're trying to get to all these different treasures in the maze. And so on your turn, you would use a tile to push these tiles down, changing the path of the maze. So you can choose which row or which column you want to push. You can push it 1 space, and then you can move your little token. They start in the corners. You can move it, and you're trying to collect these different treasures. So what really influenced me from this game is, first of all, this was probably my first game that wasn't just a roll and move game. So, Life, Monopoly, a ton of games in the 80s and 90s where you roll dice and then you move your token that number of spaces and then you just see what happens to you. Completely luck-based. Some of those games are classics and they're, they have a spot in game history. But they're not the most exciting. You don't have a lot of agency. You don't have a lot of decision making. And this was one of the first games, probably the first, where I had a lot more interesting decisions that I could do, and I could change the board, and your movement wasn't dependent on the roll of the die. It was dependent on how far you could move, and you decided where you wanted to stop. So you effectively influence how far your token can move. And that was very new to me. It was very cool, and this had a huge impact on me. And the second game I'm going to talk about is Catchphrase. So this game is like hot potato. This is my favorite party game of all time. So a clue would come up here on the screen, a digital screen. It'd be some word. And you are trying to get your teammates to guess what word it is, and there's a beeping timer going off the whole time, and you don't know when it's going to expire. You don't know how much time you have, just the beep, beep, beep is going, and if it goes off while it's in your hands, the other team gets a point. So you're trying to get your teammates to guess. Oh yeah, the batteries are out. So you're trying to get your teammates to guess. If they guess it right, you pass it to the person to your left who's on the other team. Teams alternate around the circle. If they get a new word and they describe the word they just describe the word to their teammates however they want. They can act it out. They can do pretty much anything. Because it's so fast paced, there's not a lot of rules for what you can't do. What I really like about this game and the impact it had on me is the idea of suspense and tension. With that timer going off and it being randomized, you never know when it's going to go off, you never know when your turn is up. So there's that very heightened sense of suspense and tension that is building, and it builds up into a moment of, oh no, oh. And that moment is always super special in games, and I try to create those moments in my games as well. One of the other big things about Catchphrase, it's a game, it's not a board game. Just like the pretty majority of games that I make, they don't actually have a board. I think I've made one game, like Courier City has a board, and the Musketeers game had a board, but majority of my games do not have boards. So I'm technically really a tabletop game designer, but that's just kind of long to say. So I am a board game designer, but I rarely use boards. And this game, you know, had a big impact on that because it's just this, that's it. It's more about the interaction and looking up at the people around you at the table rather than looking down at the board on the table. And one last thing I'll say about Catchphrase and why it's my favorite party game is that it hits all of the points that I try to make when I make a party game. I've developed a bit of a framework, bit of a guideline that I use when I make games. If I hit these 5 points, then I know I'm on track for a game that I'm happy with. So I call it the myself system. I like to make these acronyms to make it easy to remember these things. So it's like me, myself, and I don't know. If you can think of a better word to make out of these letters, like phlegms, let me know. So M, mental stimulation. S, social interaction. E, easy to learn. L, laughter. F, fast-paced. So if a game has all of those things, I added the M. It used to be the self system, which is very easy to remember, but I had to add the M and it kind of messed it all up. Because if you have all those things without the mental stimulation, then it's not quite as satisfying. But this game hits all those points for me very well. The next games I'm going to talk about, I don't actually have a copy because they are escape games, which I'll show right here. Escape games. So if you've played escape rooms, then you'll know kind of what I'm talking about. These are games where you and your friends are sitting around a table and you have this game and it tells you some sort of story that you're locked in a room or something's gonna happen in an hour and you need to figure it out before that hour is up. There are riddles, there are puzzles, there are different things that you need to solve as a group within that time limit to win. So the reason that I don't have a copy of these is that they are one-time experiences. So what is really interesting about these and what sort of inspires me as a designer is that they are more experiences than games, really, I would say. They are also a one-time experience. So once you've played it, you can do it again. And that kind of makes it interesting. I don't really love the waste component of it because it is a lot of waste. It's just a one-time thing and one and done. And sometimes you can't reuse them, you can't sell them because you've cut things up, you've written on things, you've done different things to the game. So I'm not huge on that part of it. But the idea of a game being more of an experience and an experience that a group can have together is also, you know, an example of a cooperative game. Everyone working together against the game. So for all these different reasons, it really influences me as a designer because it makes you think outside the box, not just a standard game. This is more of an experience and you use the components in different ways, which I really like. Some escape games have you cutting things up. You might have to look at things slightly differently for something to show up or find different clues on different parts of the boxes. So it really sort of pushes the envelope as far as components and how you use the components and how you manipulate the different parts of the game. And the fourth game I'm going to talk about is Wreck Raiders. This is a absolutely beautiful game. It's by a couple of Canadian designers, Canadian publisher. You are deep sea divers diving for different kinds of treasure. And I mean, first of all, this game is absolutely beautiful. As a designer, I have no real impact on this, but I just appreciate it. You know, when I make prototypes, I try to keep them as simple as possible. I know the publisher is going to change the artwork, so I don't spend a lot of time or money on how the prototype looks, but I do appreciate how beautiful this game is and just how high quality the material is and everything like that. So I just appreciate that, and I hope that my final products look and feel as nice as this game does. Oh, it even smells good. Oh! But the main thing that really is interesting about this game is that it uses the top of the box is actually part of the game. This is where you roll the dice, and it's just really cool how they use the box top in such an interesting way. So this just really made me think about, you know, as some of the other examples show, how to use the different components in more interesting ways. It actually made me think about an idea for a game that nothing's really happened with it. I think I maybe have described it before, but using the table in different ways, that's something that I've always wanted to do, and this really kind of pushed me to think about that, about using the table in different ways. And an idea I had was wrapping a piece of fabric around the table, and then one person would be pulling the fabric, so it'd be going around like a really fast conveyor belt, and then there would be different things going down the conveyor belt, something like that. I haven't been able to figure out how that exactly would work exactly, but games like this that use the box in interesting ways, that make you use the table in different interesting ways, really kind of helps me think about more of those things outside of the standard. And the last game I'm going to talk about is Pandemic Legacy. I know we're currently going through a pandemic right now, but this came out before that. It's still a great game. It's actually very relevant right now. But if you're not familiar with Pandemic, just standard, not Legacy, the idea is a virus is spreading around the world, and it's your job to try to contain it and find a cure. This takes that to another level, where the legacy factor means that players will make decisions that will change the board. Like, you might put stickers on the board, you might uncover different parts of the board, you might uncover different components to add to the game as you play it. And so next time you play it, it's going to look different than when you played it the time before. So this is very interesting, where players' decisions and as the game goes on will actually change how the game looks, will change how it plays. You'll discover new components, find out different things every time you play. So it's just amazing how I grew up where this was really very, just I thought, revolutionary, how it was using the board in such a different way, and it was. But it led to games like this, where you're really manipulating the board in super interesting ways. And I find that really cool. All right, gang, so those are 5 games that have influenced me as a designer. Let me know what you think. Did you have a match? Please let me know. I will send you some sort of prize or figure something out if we matched on one of those. All right, friends, so that is it for this month's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If there are any other topics you'd like for me to chat about during these videos, let me know. I'll definitely do the awkward moments one, maybe another top 5 one like this, but let me know if there are certain topics that you'd like for me to talk about more. For now, I'll say thank you. Thank you to my patrons, Monica, Kathleen, Meg, Pat, Darcy, and Nancy. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next month.